On August 28th, Jake Paul will take on Tyron Woodley. On paper, one of the best fights of this year, believe it or not. Today, we're going to try to predict the winner. You know how this goes. I'm going to try to break down their styles and give you guys an overall prediction of who's going to win this fight come fight night. Let's start with Tyron Woodley. In my opinion, one of the hardest pound-for-pound punchers in MMA. Tyron Woodley has a lot of explosive power. He's got decent speed for his age. He's got really good footwork for an MMA fighter. And let's look into his style. Tyron Woodley is a fighter who sets up everything with the 1-2. If you ever see him fight or hit mitts, you can tell that he always comes in with the 1-2, and then his money punch is a right hook. Tyron throws his hook after you throw your jab, typically. It's a counter punch that is devastating for any type of guy with the chin to take. He counters right over the jab. By seeing your jab a few times, he's ready to shoot that punch. I believe everything that Tyron Woodley does is to knock you out. He's not the type of fighter that sets up punches or sets up combinations. Everything he swings is with power and with intention to knock you out. In an MMA stance, this kind of works because there's always a threat of a takedown with Tyron Woodley being a wrestler. But as he's always getting ready to punch and punch hard, a lot of fighters aren't ready for this as they're worried about the takedown or the movement, lateral movement. However, in the boxing ring, this would be a lot different. Tyron Woodley knows how to use his jab. I've seen him in a few fights use his jab to keep opponents off of him. But like I said before, his style is kind of basic. He uses his jab to stay away, 1-2 to come in and throw combinations. And the combinations he throws are with intentions to knock you out. I don't believe Tyron Woodley is too complex. He doesn't set up traps or is a legit boxer in other sense. I believe he's a great puncher, and it's also his speed that allows him to hurt people. Doesn't set up knockout punches, but he throws them fast enough and explosive enough to where if he catches you, you're going to sleep. Jake Paul is a stick and move type of fighter and a pot shotter, meaning that he throws one hard punch at a time. The thing that Jake Paul does have is after he throws a punch, he usually moves out of the way. He has the basic ability to set up big punches. Like when you see here with Askren, it was a jab over the tie bright. But besides that, he's not too complex either. One thing I do like about Jake Paul is he's always got his chin tucked. Whenever he's throwing a power punch, his head is out of the way. He moves his head somehow when he's throwing some big punches. I would say Jake Paul is more of an in and out fighter. As he pot shots, he gets closer, shoots, and goes back out. This makes him, believe it or not, this makes him really hard to get hit because every time he throws a punch, he's out of the way. He's a big kid, and he is very hard in my opinion. Regardless if he hasn't fought any legit boxers, Jake Paul can punch. Jake Paul does not throw any combinations. He probably, like I said before, he's pot shotting the whole time trying to lay you out, but he doesn't throw many combinations, or at least we haven't seen any of him yet. Jake Paul's foot movement is decent. It's as good as Tyron Woodley's, I would say. He knows how to move in and out, but it's nothing too complex. He doesn't use his feet like a Pacquiao would to set you up. It's kind of basic in my opinion. If you match these two styles up, it's going to be a great fucking fight. This fight is very intriguing because you're talking about two power punchers, in my opinion, with limited movement, I should say. You got one fighter that's ready to knock you out with every combination. Another fighter that's ready to pot shot you when he gets a chance. Their styles are very similar, but I give the edge to Jake Paul. The slight movement he does when he punches, I believe is enough to beat Tyron Woodley. Jake Paul's a lot big, even though their power is very similar. I believe Jake Paul has more resistance than Tyron Woodley. You see, I have a theory. To take a good punch, you need to be in shape, number one. Number two, you have to have strong neck muscles. And number three, I believe the size of the cranium, the skull, has to be large to be able to take a great punch. If we ever look at the big chins in combat sports, they all have that in common. So by that definition, Tyron Woodley having a much smaller head than Jake Paul, even though he can punch, and Jake Paul can punch too, I believe it comes down to who can take a better punch. And Tyron Woodley being knocked out, I mean, he wasn't knocked out, but he was really rocked by Vicente Luque in his last fight. I don't believe he has the same resistance as Jake Paul does right now, who's never been knocked out. It's going to be a slugfest, a wild fight. But Jake Paul also being the larger man, longer man, I believe he's going to connect first. The styles match up in such a way. It's going to be about who lands first, and I believe Jake Paul is going to. And even if he doesn't, I believe he has the resistance to take Tyron's punch. The small stick and move that Jake Paul does also helps him in this fight. It's going to give Tyron Woodley a hard time landing that right hand that he loves to shoot. He's going to be limited to how often he throws it. And one thing we know about Tyron Woodley is his gas tank isn't the best. We haven't seen Jake Paul's gas tank either. But I believe him being active in boxing, he's going to have a lot more of that. Him sparring so many world champions, he's going to be used to coming in the ring and throwing punches. So also, the stamina advantage I give to Jake Paul. And I believe those two key factors are huge in this fight. We're talking about fighters who aren't Floyd Mayweather when it comes to defense, but they are Mike Tyson when it comes to offense. And this fight comes about who lands first, and I believe Jake Paul will do that. I believe August 28th, Jake Paul is going to continue his streak and move on to other MMA fighters. Even though Tyron Woodley is a great fighter, I don't see him being Jake Paul. Jake Paul is a legit boxer. He's been training with legit guys. Tyron Woodley has been working on his wrestling and other skills for MMA. He's not going to come in here and just take out 8 weeks notice. It doesn't work that way. I believe we're going to see Jake Paul's best fight, however. This is a dangerous guy, and I expect him to hurt Jake Paul too. But ultimately, I predict that Jake Paul is going to knock him out. It'll be a slugfest, and I believe your money should go to Jake Paul. You won't be mad at me if you do that. I'm just breaking it down without being biased.